Hi guys, and welcome to this training session on the Wiser Underfloor Heating Controller, where I'm going to take you through how adding these devices to your Wiser system will give you the capability to control multi-loop, water-based underfloor heating. So this is the Wiser Underfloor Heating Controller. This will allow you to integrate and control multi-loop wet underfloor heating with your Wiser system. Each one of these controllers will support up to 6 zones of wet underfloor heating, and the zones can be made up of multi-loops, so a total of 14 thermal actuators can be controlled using 6 Wiser room thermostats. The system also has connections for pump boiler interlock, as well as having a heating and cooling changeover function. From an installer's perspective, the system has been designed to make installation and commissioning as easy as possible. For instance, you can test the system without the need to have any other Wiser equipment installed. The control has clever functions such as a built-in pump overrun and a 30-second delay between switching thermal actuators to manage the load on the system. Just to recap, this is how Wiser works. The Wiser HubR broadcasts a separate devices network which allows all the Wiser devices, such as the Wiser radiator and room thermostats, to connect. If you need to extend this network, you've got the Wiser plugs, which double as range extenders for the hub. These plugs mesh together to give you a really robust network that the Wiser Underfloor Heating Controller also joins. Being mains powered, the Underfloor Heating Controller also forms an access point that the other devices can route through, so the more of these controllers that you have on the system, the more robust your network becomes, with less reliance on Wiser plugs to boost the range. So let's take a closer look at the hardware. I'll begin by taking you through what the functions across the top do. So beginning with the setup button. This is the button that you'll use when you join the underfloor heating controller to the device network. This is accompanied by the setup indicator, which gives you an indication of what mode the controller is in. This is the override or test button. This allows you to sequentially go through and fire banks of thermal actuators from 1 to 6. Next up, we have our indicator to show whether the control is in heating or cooling mode. This is then followed by indicators to show which zones are calling for heat. If there is a call for heat on any one of these banks, you will have a green indicator illuminate, and the thermal actuators connected to that bank will begin to open. This indicator shows that the pump output is active. Again, this will be as a result of a call for heat from any one of the underfloor heating zones. This symbol is the boiler interlock. You can choose within the app whether you want this contact or the relay in the HubR to fire when there is a call for heat. The final symbol is to indicate that the Wiser Underfloor Heating Controller is powered. This indicator will be on all of the time. Now we'll remove the cover and have a closer look at what's underneath. The first bank of 4 terminals is reserved for sensors. The first 2 are for a floor sensor. So if you've got underfloor heating running underneath a sensitive floor covering, you're able to ensure the temperature doesn't swing or get too high. The next 2 terminals are for a dew sensor to prevent excessive condensation when the control is in cooling mode. Moving on, and we have the changeover contact to toggle between heating and cooling mode. Now we're into the banks of terminals where the thermal actuators connect. Multiple thermal actuators can be controlled per zone. For instance, one Wiser room thermostat assigned to Zone 2 is able to open up to 4 thermal actuators. Here are the volt-free contacts for the pump and boiler interlock. It is important to remember to bring in a pump supply which will connect to N1 and L1 and the pump load to N2 and L2. The final 2 terminals are where you connect the mains in. Moving away from the terminal rail, there is onboard protection with the internal fuse. Below are the cord grips to manage the cables coming in and out of the control. The boiler and pump slots are slightly larger to accommodate cable with a greater cross-sectional area. Lastly, we have the screw connector to accept the external antenna. How you wire this will be dependent on your system requirements. Each one of the banks will be assigned a Wiser room thermostat, but you can see banks 1 and 2 will accommodate up to 4 thermal actuators each. You don't have to use all of the ways, but if you've only got 2, you're more likely to wire to banks 3 and 4, and similarly if you're just controlling singles, zones 5 and 6. If you have more than 6 underfloor heating zones or more than 14 thermal actuators to control, you can add up to 3 Wiser underfloor heating controllers to any one system. The system I'm showing here is predominantly underfloor heating, but you can mix it with a wet central heating system using the Wiser radiator thermostats. As always, we need to stay within the system capacity of 16 zones and 63 devices. Each Wiser underfloor heating controller will count as a device, and each one of these can have up to 6 Wiser room thermostats assigned to it. Next, let's have a look at the installation process of the Wiser underfloor heating controller. Here I have a fairly standard, albeit quite small, underfloor heating manifold with 3 separate loops. At the top is the flow manifold and at the bottom is the return. The pipes from the floor will terminate back to here, and it's on the return that we have a set of thermal actuators to permit or restrict flow into the loops. There is also an underfloor heating pump that's going to connect to the pump output on the underfloor heating controller. Next, the thermal actuators are fitted onto the manifold. These need to be 2-wire, 230-volt thermal actuators. These screw onto the manifold in a similar way to how a TRV attaches to a valve body. These have a wax motor inside that when you energise, the motor actuates. Now we're ready to install the unit. The Wiser underfloor heating controller fits on a DIN rail, and to mount this you first open up the clips which allows the DIN rail to be removed. Once screwed to something solid, the underfloor heating controller clips on. Now it's ready for wiring. The cover comes off with the use of the screwdriver in the slot. With the cover removed, the terminal rail is exposed and we can route the cables into the cord grips. For this demo, 2 of the thermal actuators are going to be on one zone and 1 thermal actuator is going to be on another. There is also the pump connections that need to be made off, both the pump supply and feed. These cables will fit into one of the bigger slots. To ensure that there is a call for heat at the boiler, the interlock is wired to a 2-port zone valve which will permit flow into the manifold. The final connection will be to connect mains power to run the unit. The flexible cables that are used for all of the connections are retained by the cord grips by pressing down with the side of a screwdriver. The Wiser underfloor heating controller uses screwless terminals. You simply press down with your screwdriver, insert the wire, release, and the wire is now retained. All of these wires have got bootlace ferrules crimped on the end, which makes things much easier when using stranded cable. It's good practice to use ferrules or tin the ends of the cable to make sure you don't get any loose strands of wire that risk shorting. If you need to remove any of these wires, they are demountable by pressing down on the button with your screwdriver and pulling out like so. Once the wiring is complete, the cover can be replaced by sliding on. The small card on the cover can be removed and the zones labelled accordingly. Finally, connect the antenna by screwing onto the connector at the bottom of the unit. The antenna itself has a self-adhesive pad on the reverse side. Simply peel off and find a suitable location. We can now power up the Wiser underfloor heating controller and we're able to test its operation without connecting to a HubR. Here I want to fire zone 3 and 5, and this can be done by pressing and holding the override button until zone 1 starts flashing. Step through using the override button and confirm the selection with a longer press. Once the required zones have been selected, continue to step through with the override button until the zones fire. This is a really useful feature for testing as well as venting and filling. The call for heat can be cancelled by a further press of the override button. This de-energises the interlock, but the pump will keep running until the overrun times out. That's the hardware installation done. The next part of the installation is to set up using the Wiser Home app. Launch the app and click Get Started. Follow the professional installer route and connect your phone to the HubR. Once connected, skip the Wi-Fi setup to get to the Adding Devices page. Mains powered devices always need to be added to the system first, so we'll begin by selecting the underfloor heating controller. The app prompts you to make sure that the device is powered. Press the next button and the app guides you to press and hold the setup button on the underfloor heating controller to get it into join mode. After a couple of seconds, the app gives you confirmation that the devices have been joined. You now need to give it a name. In this case, it's controlling the ground floor underfloor heating. Here, the output type, when there is a call for heat, is defined. Either the interlock on the underfloor heating controller or the relay in the Wiser HubR. This is a useful feature as it can save the need to run extra cables between devices. Confirm the selection using the Submit button and you'll return to the Adding Devices page. Before the zones can be controlled, we need to join and assign Wiser room thermostats. Choose the room thermostat option and insert the batteries into the room stat. After a few seconds, the device will join and it's confirmed on the app. The thermostat is given a name based on the zone it's going to control. The heating type is then set, and here we choose the underfloor heating controller and the appropriate channel from 1 to 6. In this example, the kitchen is on zone 3, so I'll choose that and submit the change. From the home screen, there is now a zone called Kitchen. This is controlled in the same way as any other zone on the Wiser Home app. All underfloor heating zones will feature in Insights and 𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗃, which is a really useful tool for the customer to monitor their energy use per zone. Thanks for watching this training video, and if you need any more information or resources, head over to our website wiser.draytoncontrols.co.uk.